meeting of the Infrastructure Investment Inclusive Growth Scrutiny Board. Before we get onto the formal agenda, I'm going to invite board members, at least those who are in position, to introduce themselves to our physical attendees and to those who are watching our proceedings online. So I'll start on this side. Give Sharon time to reach a seat.
Good morning, Councillor Paul Alderson, Guiseley and Roden Ward.
Mike Foster, elected member for Ardsley and Robin Hood.
Oh, Molly South, sorry. Did you get that? Sorry.
Morning, Councillor Alfison, Gibson and Hare Hills.
Councillor Wilson, Wheatwood Ward.
Councillor John Garvani, Horsforth Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Sharon Hamilton, Moortown and Meanwood Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Mamish Shazad from the Moortown and Meanwood Ward.
And I'm Councillor Paul Truswell and I represent Middleton and Belle Isle, and I'm also chair of the board. Right, moving on to the formal items of the agenda. Agenda item 1, appeals against refusal of inspection of documents. There are no appeals. Agenda item 2, exempt information. There is no exempt information. Agenda item 3, late items. There are no late items. Agenda item 4, I invite any members who have not already done so to draw attention to any interests in accordance with the Council's Councillor Code of Conduct. I'm not aware of any. Agenda item 5, apologies for absence. We've got apologies from Councillor Cooper for agenda item 8, the digital update, and also received apologies from Eve Woodhouse. That takes us on to page 5, the minutes of the meeting of the 15th of June. And in my usual fashion, I will go through them page by page. Please shout out if you feel that they're inaccurate in any way or if you've got any matters arising. So, page 5. Page 6. Page 7, just to note that there is reference under our discussion on the number of affordable homes to a delivery partnership plan, which was in a draft form, I think, at the time of our discussions. That's now been completed, and the officers responsible for that document have indicated that they would like to come to the board prior to the document going to exec board. As our next formal public meeting would be after executive board, what I'm proposing, and I think in the pre-meeting it was agreed, is that we should have a working group, and through Becky I will be consulting you on possible dates for that working group. So if we could note and agree that, please. Moving on, agenda item, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11. Are board members agreeable to my signing these as a correct record? Yes, thank you. Okay, that takes us on to agenda item 7. And we've got Fiona flying solo by the looks of it because of Eve's absence. I mean, just very quickly to introduce this, obviously you will have read the report, board members, and it maps out in a very broad sense the sort of work that is going to be undertaken in order to address the issue of green jobs within the context of our climate emergency declaration. We've already in Leeds got a growing green economy. We clearly want to maximise that. We want to ensure as far as possible, and I think Fiona will be touching on this, the opportunities for the more marginalised and deprived sections of our community and individuals to share in that growth and be prepared for that growth. And we also have to be mindful of those industries and the sizable number of people who work in them that do make a considerable contribution to greenhouse gas emissions and how we address those particular challenges. So with that, Fiona, if you could just introduce yourself and then talk to the report, but assume that members have read it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and morning, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Fiona Bolam and I'm the Head of Economic Policy. The report, we want to review the local green transition through an inclusive economic growth lens. So this is how we're thinking about it. And we're commissioning a piece of work to help us explore what that transition to net zero means for the Leeds economy, including for specific sectors, how we understand those risks and opportunities associated with it. And one of the things we want to come out of it is some practical recommendations to help us realise the opportunities for businesses and employers within Leeds and how we can address those challenges we face becoming climate resilient. So this is the part of a suite of policy work that will help inform the refresh of the Leeds Inclusive Growth Strategy over the next year. Our current strategy runs up until June 2023. So this is all kind of things that are going to feed into that. The work aligns well with some work that's currently being undertaken by Wicker, which is aiming to gain a clear picture of the West Yorkshire green economy, including jobs and skills and relevant supply chains. So this work is complementary to that. And I have shared the brief with colleagues from other local authority areas in West Yorkshire as well. So if I'm thinking about why we're doing this, there's already a lot of things that are happening in the space around sort of climate resilience, especially, and I know this scrutiny board gets a lot of updates around flooding, but there is also things happening to support business. So for instance, we've got the REBIS programme, which is the Resource Efficiency Business Audits. There are some grants, this is at the Wicker level, so this is across West Yorkshire. There are grants for carbon reduction projects, and there's some work ongoing around the circular economy support and things like, you know, the green travel plan. In Leeds, we also ran an EV trial scheme with local businesses, which was really successful. And of those businesses, 52% have plans to either lease or buy an EV that have come from that. And in the city, Leeds Anchors, of which we are one, have been doing an awful lot of work in this area as well. And I'll just draw out one, which was Yorkshire Water and their climate resilience plan and the multiple programmes they've got to deal with adaptation. So for us, we need to think about what this means for business, what we understand by the risks and opportunities, and where our economy and what we can do to practically help those businesses make that transition. We're looking at both new sectors and the mainstream economy in this. So this is not just about sectors, what we think of as green. We need to think about which employers and which sectors can sort of pivot and change their business models if they're now at risk from some of the transition. We want to link to the work that's ongoing in the city around innovation and also think about workforce skills around some of this. In terms of the work, we want to think about our role as the council. So what can we do? So where do our business support programmes need to change in order to actually practically help those businesses? How can we help them diversify their business models? And which industries should we prioritise for support and why? We also want to think about our role as a convener, in particular regarding financial services. So this piece of work, we want to look at both sort of the manufacturing type sectors, but also recognise our strength in services. And we think that we've got some real strength around green finance in the city, both with the new entrants to the city, such as the Bank of England and the UK Infrastructure Bank, but also the strength that exists in particular in the university as well. So we're interested in exploring those opportunities. We are going to commission this work. It will be going out in the next week or so, and we'll be appointing somebody to work with us over the next few months. I'm expecting to make an appointment of a partner in August. Okay, so that's the main body of the report. We've also included an annex in this of some work that we have had done free of charge by the Centre for Progressive Policy. We get that because we're a member of the National Inclusive Growth Network. We're one of the founder members, and part of that is we get 10 days support from the Centre for Progressive Policy. So they've done this really quick bit of work, just a bit of desk-based work, looking specifically at some at-risks for Leeds, and they looked at it in terms of employment sectors. And I'll just pick out one or two key things from that, and then I'll pause and see if anybody has any questions. So in terms of the key points around risk, there's 31,000 jobs, they think, in high emitting industries. That's in both broad sort of manufacturing in the city and in transport. They account for about 11,000 each, and the rest are spread across the rest of the sectors. We think those jobs are broadly concentrated in about 20 lower super output areas, and areas with high employment in these kind of sectors tend to be more in those disadvantaged areas. They also did look quickly at some potential opportunities and have pulled out our strength in financial services and the potential to establish a green finance hub here in Leeds. They also pulled out the University of Leeds as a global leader in sort of climate change, and our proximity to the Humber, it's a green industrial cluster, and they're focused on how they can actually really quickly get to net zero, and they have a specific interest in hydrogen as well. So we need to think about that as our closest one, about how we can link to those. The work that CPP did for us in terms of risks compared to other cities, we broadly compare favourably to the other core cities on measures around economic vulnerability in terms of climate. Where we didn't compare quite so favourably was on emissions per jobs. However, this is a little bit a bit technical, and it's a bit of a geographical sort of quirk. So what that is being driven by is the 2,500 jobs that are in air transport. The majority of the other cities do not have the airports within the boundary, so it does not show up there. I think there's only Liverpool that does. So Manchester's doesn't show up because it's in Stockport. So it's just a bit of a quirk. When we smooth that out, we're actually pretty, on the same as most of the cities in terms of emissions. So that's kind of a really quick run through that work. And I'll just hand over for questions now.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. Before I ask members of the board if they have any questions or comments to make, since I introduced the item, we've now got two executive board members, Councillors Aidan and Pryor, who might like to introduce themselves for members of the public who are watching us online, no doubt, with huge interest, and to make any comments, introductory comments that you wish to at this stage.
So,
over to you.
Say our name 3 times and we appear from upstairs. I'm Councillor Jonathan Pryor. I'm the Deputy Leader and Executive Member for Economy, Culture and Education. I can't make any opening remarks, but I'm happy to be here for questions as well.
I'm Councillor Helen Hayden, Exec Member for Infrastructure and Climate. So I really welcome this report in terms of the green infrastructure, and Fiona's done a fantastic job of taking us through it there. So also happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do board members have any questions at this stage? Neil.
Thank you, Chair. It was really a general point. On page 14, and Fiona mentioned it in her comments, at paragraph 4, the resource efficient business, the REBIS and the travel plan network are mentioned. And now, am I right in thinking that Leeds City Council has already received funds from these sources? My question was, how much money has the city received in total? That's my first question, Chair.
So I don't think it's a devolved fund. What it is this fund is managed across West Yorkshire by Wicker. I can see if they disaggregate any of their sort of management information and come back to you to see if we can get a figure for how much of that has been spent in Leeds.
Right. So we don't know how much has come to the city or will come to the city. The point I'm making about this is that obviously most of us will have noticed that the political situation is changing a bit at the present time. What risk is there that projects might be committed to, and then the commitment to giving these funds might be less than it is now?
So it's a touch more political. I think I'll take that. I suppose at the moment, given the pledges that are coming out of the 8 candidates for Prime Minister, the risk is unknown at the moment. I think a lot of them are promising some fantasy politics where we'll slash taxes and increase spending everywhere. And if candidates are promising that, who knows what they'll actually do if any of them become Prime Minister. So I guess we don't really have a proper answer on what the next Prime Minister will do, given we don't know who that is. But well, in 2 months' time, maybe we'll have a better idea.
Councillor Hayden.
Just to build on that, there's an open letter gone today from hundreds of businesses, including giants like Amazon, to the candidates, because their lack of talking about environmental, climate change, green infrastructure, it's noticeable by its absence in their pledges so far. And we've yet to see all the hustings and what have you, but just to draw scrutiny's attention to that open letter that's come from businesses. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Councillor Hayden. It came as a welcome surprise in many respects that colossal multinational businesses were putting pressure on the candidates not to move back from environmental measures. Some of the candidates, of course, are pledged to remove certain elements of it, which is a bit disturbing. But anyway, Neil, you had further questions, I think.
Well, the other question was, I just heard reference to Yorkshire Water, and I must confess I hadn't seen that in the report. Could Fiona just enlighten me on that, please?
So yes, this is the work that's just being done through Leeds Anchors. We asked them for examples of what they're already doing, and what the Yorkshire Water example that I called out here is around their climate resilience plan and the programmes that they've got, including their water resource plan. It was just asking for examples of what's already ongoing with our Anchor network. We can always find out more.
Thank you, Chair. It was just the final point, particularly on the Yorkshire Water. It will be interesting, I'm sure, and I've mentioned this before, I'm sure they are doing good things with all the various aspects of what we're talking about now. But I wonder how they square what they say they're doing with selling off woodland, which they appear to be doing. And I think I've made this point before, that there are at least 2 woodlands in my ward which have been sold off to private buyers who only have one objective, and that's to build a house on them. And we're then faced with a battle royal of trying to avoid a planning consent. There we are, Chair, that's it.
Okay, I'm not sure that necessarily falls within the remit of this report or what we're discussing today. Interesting point though it is, Neil, but I don't know if any of my colleagues want to make a response to that.
I do remember Councillor Buckley bringing that up when we had Yorkshire Water in the room. I will endeavour to check what the status is on from colleagues at Yorkshire Water, who we as a council work very closely with on flood alleviation and flooding systems, along with the Environment Agency as well. So I will endeavour to find out. Thank you.
Well, I was going to ask a question regarding Yorkshire Water, but since Councillor Hayden is saying that work very closely with Yorkshire Water, I will come and see you, because Yorkshire Water, obviously I was going to ask about the plans and I would like to see more of it, because there's issues in our ward with Yorkshire Water and the system drains not working. But I'll come and see you since you're working so closely with them, because I'm having great difficulty with them. My other question was, the council will therefore be commissioning partners. How long are we going to have this commissioning going on for? And the other question, just before you come in, I know we're looking at big business, economy, etc. What about the small business, local business, you know, are they going to get any look-in, help, support, or be involved within the communities?
So in terms of partner, what we mean by that is it's a consultancy or to actually help us to write a report and to work with us on it. In terms of the recommendation, we're not necessarily just focusing on large businesses. It needs to kind of actually go through sort of businesses of most sizes. And in terms of what will be available for them, I think that depends on some of the practical recommendations about what support those businesses actually need for different sectors, and also about what potential opportunities there will be as well. So I'm thinking around sort of supply chains into construction and supply chains into sort of other areas as well. So I don't think this is just going to be about those large businesses.
How long are we having the commissioning going? Because sometimes these things go on and on and on, and they never seem to come to any end. So how long are we looking at?
So we will be, I'll be appointing sort of somebody to work with us in August. This is not going to be a long position, a long thing. We need a report that's going to be able to feed into the inclusive growth strategy. I'd like to see something ready by, if not by the end of the year, certainly by January. And the key findings would be, I'd be very happy to come back to scrutiny and to talk through the key findings when we have it. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. On page 14, paragraph 4, we're on about the successful trials of the electric vehicles, and it says we should hopefully have a 52% of businesses taking up, but have we got the infrastructure for more electrical vehicles? And when will we find out if actually those businesses that we had down as 52% of them should be taking up electric vehicles? When will we find out if actually they took up the electric vehicles, or would we not have a follow-up on that? And again, Councillor Hamilton's point, I know you've mentioned supply chain and other businesses linked to the bigger businesses, but you've got local small businesses that necessarily are not part of that supply chain, but they want to become more environmentally efficient. They want to reduce their carbon footprint. What support have we got for those businesses?
Before you come in, Fiona, could I just piggyback on Councillor Shazad's questions to ask what information we have from those businesses who indicated they weren't going to pursue the provision of electric vehicles? Are there any lessons to be learned from them as to the obstacles to pushing this out still further?
So if I'm going to take those in reverse, if that's all right. So Councillor Truswell, in terms of those who said they wouldn't consider or they weren't sure, I have asked, because this has been managed by Polly Cook's team, the reasons that they wouldn't were the vehicle range, the charging time, and the lack of charging infrastructure and initial cost. So those were the reasons that they gave not to. In terms of support for smaller businesses, that is the ReBiz programme that is currently actually up and running. It has been for a number of years. I can get a link sent to you for where all the information is on that and for how businesses can access that, because it is already in place. And in terms of follow-up, I'll need to go back to Polly Cook and ask her what follow-up is happening, and we'll do a written response on that so we can check to see if they are actually checking to see who has purchased one.
Yeah, just a quick one on the, like you mentioned in one of your answers, the infrastructure, have we got enough charging ports available for people who want to get electric vehicles? Because especially in local centres, there's a big lack of them. You might get one or two, but if you want everyone to get an electrical vehicle, and especially when they can't charge them at home because we've got lots of terraced houses, and we were supposed to be looking into how they can actually manage to charge their vehicles, but we've still not had an answer. So how would we go through that?
As Fiona said, it is being led by Polly Cook and her team. In terms of EV charging, it is it's ongoing issue. We are focusing on local centres, as you said, and there will be across West Yorkshire 340 charging points going in. We've also got a structure for charging in schools, which also comes under Councillor Pryor's, and that schools can bid into. But I can get a written response for the board on actually the work that's been doing specifically on EV charging. But it's a much better picture. What we don't want is wires across streets. The street lights are not, because of where they're positioned, they're not suitable for taking an EV charger either. So you might have seen on Shell's advert that, street lights converted into EV chargers as well. That's not possible with the street lights that we've got in Leeds. So we're working very, very hard on this issue and to get as much EV chargers as we can in around the city and around West Yorkshire as well. Thank you.
So I've got Councillor Arif.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to follow a little bit more up from the Councillor Hamilton and Mohammed. Small businesses. I think we all knows why they are struggling last, especially 3 months. It's not just only for the Leeds, it could be, well, obviously I'm sure right across the country. But especially in my ward, Chair, the number of the small businesses, they're not running a small, they're living in the ward, but they're running the businesses in West Yorkshire. But I think we needed to work with all the combined authorities and how we can help them as well, because I do remember very well onto the taxi issue when we, spoke to them onto the, especially to the hybrid, it comes like a Leeds postcode and BD, and some of the BD's drivers who are licensed, Chair, for the Leeds City Council, they didn't get the funding. They didn't get even from Leeds and from Bradford as well. So I want to make sure, please, we needed to work with combined authority and fine what they are a citizen of the Leeds, but they're running the business, could be Bradford, could be Kirklees, Halifax, York, anywhere else.
Just to confirm on that, any funding that comes from Leeds City Council for residents in Leeds and businesses in Leeds wouldn't be based on postcodes. It wouldn't be you had a Bradford postcode, therefore you wouldn't get it. If you were in the Leeds boundaries, you would get it.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks. This seems like a really important report. Would I be right in saying it's kind of it's a starting point, really, because it seems to have a very, it's a very wide scope. I think the two big things are aiding existing employers and people in existing industries, and also looking at how we can bring in more green jobs, green companies. And my concern would be with such a wide scope and a relatively small report, it could just be a kind of snapshot in time. And how do we have facility to act on that? And sort of, if a lot of these risks are emerging, sort of keep a focus on that and kind of keep looking at that information and acting on it over time. And I suppose related to that, is it better if a West Yorkshire Combined Authority are doing a report looking at existing green jobs and where the potential for growth is it better for our report to focus on existing employers and how we can help them navigate the transition through net zero?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it is. And we are trying to make sure that we don't, the work that's going on in West Yorkshire, what we're doing is complementary. And this is not necessarily about attracting new businesses in here. It's about making sure we're supporting the businesses that we've got so that they are well placed to still be here and change what they're doing. I totally accept that this is quite wide scope, and it might be in sort of discussion with whoever we appoint to do this. We do narrow some of this, but I do want to make sure that we have some practical stuff. This is not just a policy report for the inclusive growth. We do need some real concrete proposals that we can then look at how we how we do adapt the business support offer. And we need to think about that in the context of sort of the Shared Prosperity Fund as well. And we'll share this and we'll talk to other West Yorkshire authorities. Like I say, they're already aware of it, and the combined authority, to see if actually what the learnings are for the rest of West Yorkshire, because I think actually a lot of it will be relevant as well, directly relevant for them. And we're happy to work with them on this.
To come back on anything, Isaac? Okay.
Hi, going back to the lighting, in Morley, Leeds City Council have just replaced our lighting in our main Queen Street, much to the upset of residents, because it's gone from the traditional to the modern. But we've explained that, you know, it's the LED and the safety at night and things like that. But at a cost of doing that, going back to the for the electric car, you know, the charging point, is it not something that Leeds City Council can look into for future? You know, when they're replacing lighting, that the charge, you know, it could be done like we're saying that the whoever the petrol people are advertising that they are on social, you know, on the television. Is it something that we can go into in the future, please?
It could be, but we're in contract at the moment.
Oh, I
so,
see. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Fair
yeah, it could be something in the future if we are replacing. And it is a shame to lose. I saw that on social media, to lose those beautiful street lights. That's just so much cheaper and better for the environment, the LED, and yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
Thanks. Yeah, just a fairly simple query, but the climate emergency project, as far as I'm aware, kicked off in 2019. And as far as I'm aware, we're now looking to do a report to gauge the risk to the local economy. And that report's not due to be completed till next year, according to this report. I'm just wondering why we didn't do the risk assessment before we embarked on the project. And what are the options if it turns out that the challenges against the economy are insurmountable to reach the 2030 deadline?
So this report's less about the risk and more about what are those specific practical opportunities for business. So we have got some work around risk that we'll be looking at, but the work that CPP have done are already flagging some of that up. And it's about how we then incorporate some of this in our economic strategy going forward, actually. I don't think this report will come out and say, on balance, we should or shouldn't be doing any of this. I think this is much more in that space of what can businesses, you know, where do businesses need to pivot, what support we need to give them, and which sectors of the economy are we expecting to grow and how we then support that.
Councillor Pryor.
And equally on top of that, I disagree with your characterisation that you've got to choose between the climate and the economy. I think a lot of the work that we're doing can actually show that you can still have growth in an economy, you can still have a strong economy with jobs, with, you know, good jobs as well, while also working towards carbon neutrality. I don't think it's an either or at all, but it is quite a shift in how we do a lot of things. So this is just part of looking at how we make those changes.
Coming in that chair as well, just to support Councillor Pryor on that. The letter that was written and published today talks about 100,000 green jobs. In fact, a lot of these jobs, unfortunately, will, or fortunately, depending on what side of the coin you are, become more and more, and I'm speaking here as a coal miner's granddaughter, so, you know, more and more obsolete, and it's the green jobs, and Leeds needs to be ahead of that, ahead of the game in terms of making our economy resilient and tackling the climate emergency as well.
Yeah, I think that point is well made. I think apart from a minority of climate change deniers, most people and most parties, especially in this country, subscribe to the view that there's a climate emergency, which we've got to do our bit to tackle, whatever the constraints might be. But we obviously are constrained by lots of different potential obstacles. But do you want to come back on that, Mike?
Actually, no, not on that specific point, but I just had a further point to make about the project itself. And it was the word that stood out to me, and it's one that's well known to myself. But you see the project or Leeds being used as a test bed by getting ahead of the curveball on this. And I just wonder, the report seems to suggest being a test bed is an advantage. Someone from sort of worked in an industry that would generally shy away from sort of test bed innovation. Normally, if you want value for money, reliability, low risk, low cost, and best product, you're normally going for something that's tried and tested and not something that's a test bed, basically.
Pick the bones out of that one. I think the context of the report is that we've got opportunities. We've got two major new institutions that are going to be located in Leeds, and hopefully we can tap into them. And perhaps test bed does have a number of negative connotations, but I see it in a much more positive context.
Yes, Chair, I'm really, Leeds has always innovated for the last 200 years. Leeds has innovated, and that's why we're in the position that we are now. So we need to take that innovative spirit, and I'm happy with the test bed because that's where the future comes from.
I'm going to bring Councillor Shazad in a moment, but I think it's an appropriate point, a logical point for me to ask one of the questions that I've had, and it relates to paragraph 2 on page 14. Sorry, no, paragraph 3 on page 14, and it's the modelling by the Local Government Association that indicates that Leeds will generate more green jobs than any other of the core cities. And I just wonder if we could be given a bit of an insight into how that modelling and that calculation's made, because we're very used to, on this board, and I suppose others, getting these figures. And I'm not saying that they clutched out of thin air, because clearly they're not, but it's always useful to know what the methodology has been and, you know, how robust the figure is when we're quoting things like this.
Okay, so I'll give you what I've got and what we've been able to actually dig into from the LGA report. This was a report by Acuity Consulting that was done for the LGA, and I can circulate that afterwards so you can have a look at that. They used ONS classification of low carbon jobs, and they identified 6 high-level sectors ranging from low carbon electricity and energy efficiency and vehicles. They analysed the uptake of clean low carbon technology by required to meet net zero. They've used a time series on that uptake. They've then looked at research and estimating the number of employment intensity. So I am reading from a briefing here. You'll be gobsmacked to know. Intensity associated with that technology. They have also they're looking at direct jobs as well, not indirect jobs. And they have used national estimates, and they've used BRES, the Business Register and Employment Survey data. So this is all national data. They've looked at standard industrial classification code. It's all things that are public. And that's the robust methodology behind some of that. I will send this separate briefing that I've had to yourself, Chair, so you can actually see it in detail, and very happy for it to be circulated.
And I think in it, perhaps slightly less tangibly, this goes back to the point Councillor Hayden was making about being a test bed, and the Councillor Foster made about kind of, do you stick to tried and tested methods, or do you try to be innovative? The economy of the country and of the world is going in this direction. And actually, a lot of the time as a city, in many ways, we're in competition with other cities in other parts of the country in terms of inward investment. A lot of companies, a lot of big companies with a lot of jobs are looking for places who are looking to innovate. And actually, if we create the environment where those jobs can be created, I think there's a real opportunity there. And actually, that opportunity that Leeds is taking up is actually reflected in some of the data.
Sure.
Just to add in as well, when I mentioned things like the Humber cluster and things like that before, we're thinking about sort of, obviously, if you're thinking about technology like wind and all of that, actually all of those things that were manufactured, most of that happened outside of the UK. Actually, we've missed the boat on some of that, on some of this, and actually we don't want to do that again. And by making sure that we're actually, you know, the innovation side and the test bed, I think that's really important. And we have got some great companies in Leeds, and we've got some really forward-looking things. So anecdotally, Situ, you know, their housing development, they've had to import quite a lot of the materials to make some of those, because actually the businesses in this country have not been there to actually deliver some of that. And when we want to make sure that there are, and some of the innovation linked to that is really important, but actually that long supply chain as well. So I think there are things there that we can do.
Okay, thank you. Just following on from that, and then I will bring in other colleagues. Thank you, Fiona, for giving us some insight as to how that figure from Local Government Association was compiled. But are there any plans for us to do our own Leeds version so that we can look at a baseline of where we are at the moment in terms of green jobs and the green economy and measure over time how we've developed that? Clearly, you know, we've got a history of KPIs looking at health inequalities, looking at inclusive growth more recently. And I just wonder whether we're going to be looking at green growth, for want of a better expression, in a similar way over time.
So first of all, I want to see what the output is from the work from Wicker at the West Yorkshire level about what that is actually going to capture. And we'll see what the employment and skills team have got already. But there is work underway in that team. And again, I'd need to get Martin Long to come to feedback that. But I think the work from Wicker is going to give us a bit of a definition around green jobs as well and have a look at that baseline position. But I don't know at this point when that's going to report.
Okay, thank you. You need to switch your microphone off, Fiona. Mo, with your indulgence, I'll bring Councillor Garvani in because he's not spoken yet, and then I will come to you. John.
Thank you, Chair. Fiona, you mentioned Humberside a couple of times in the cluster there, and you also mentioned in passing the work they're doing on hydrogen. Now, if we're talking about innovation, that is where I see the real innovation to come, because that's the one technology that doesn't transfer pollution in the way that EV does. And we all know the problems of batteries and the problems of mining the rare earth minerals and everything. We're surrounded by water. Yes, you need energy to get the hydrogen, but it probably is the next technology. Do you know of anything being done around Leeds for that?
So I'd have to come back to you on that. I do know the University of Leeds, in terms of their research side, is quite strong in this, but in terms of what we're doing and what some of the businesses are doing, I don't at the moment, but we can look at that.
There is some in terms of companies wanting to invest in hydrogen, very interested in coming to Leeds. So there is ongoing work on that, but I can see if there's anything that I could share with the board as yet. But we are definitely talking to companies via, well, Polly Cook and her team are in terms of bringing hydrogen to the city. Yeah.
Councillor Shazad and then Councillor Alderson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Page 16, paragraph, well, point 8 and employment and risk industries. We've got 31,000 jobs that are considered to be high emitting. What are our plans to actually train people or get them ready for the green jobs? And also the issue with this is that with most of those jobs being in lowest super output areas, it seems to be that with the climate, we are not taking them into consideration, where they seem to be the ones bearing the brunt of everything that we are doing. For example, I could give you the transport industry. We had the clean air zone that was coming in, and the transport industry did not get a good deal to move to more environmentally friendly vehicles compared to other cities who are bringing in the clean air zone. And therefore, we need to make sure that it's those people, as Councillor Hayden said, she's coming from a mining background, that at the end of the day, we need to make sure that those 31,000 jobs are not people that are then left on the unemployed queue, and the training starts after they are made unemployed, so they haven't got a chance to either transition in a way where they're already learning skills to the point where we then think,
we can move into the green jobs, because that's the thing, because a lot of these people will probably be in those jobs for a long time, and for them to retransition so quickly will be difficult unless you start thinking about some sort of training or transitioning for them now. Otherwise, the lowest super output areas, we will be making them poorer because these people will be unemployed. So what plans do we have for that?
So we would need employment skills to come back. It is on their agenda, but they would need to come back and give you that information about what's happening.
I think it's an excellent point, Councillor Shazad. I have first-hand experience of what the closing of the mines did to the communities up in County Durham, where my family live. It's taken them decades to to kind of come out of it in any sustainable way. And the North East is it is a very different place to where it was in the 80s. But we need, yes, you're absolutely right. We need to do the work now. And on the green jobs agenda, we are working in terms of, I've done, being part of, bringing schools into kind of telling them what's available, and working with young people. But you're absolutely right. Those 31,000 jobs in the highest output in terms, and the fact that they're in our lowest deprived areas, it's a really, really good point. And I'm sure that employment and skills are working on it, but it's something we need to keep an eye on and move fast, move quickly, so that we are ahead of the game when those jobs do become obsolete. Thank you.
I agree. I think it's a really important point. And I think Councillor Hayden makes kind of the obvious parallel with the closing of the mines. I think there's a slight difference in that that was a quite sudden thing, which led to huge communities, being unemployed, and obviously the impacts of that have been felt for decades. This is something which is going to be probably a bit more gradual. It's not going to be everyone all at once in the same way, but we are doing a huge amount of work on it. It's probably something which that one question could have an entire scrutiny inquiry in itself, because those thousands of people aren't going to move all from one industry to another. There are several people across many industries who will move across many other industries over several years. There's a huge amount of work that the Mayor is undertaking. Skills is obviously part of her funding as well. So you're absolutely right to highlight it, but it is a huge question with a huge piece of work behind it that will take years and years.
And I think we ought to avoid the assumption that certain industries, irrespective of their high carbon generation, are going to be eradicated or wiped off the face of the earth. I think part of the challenge is minimising the impact of some of those industries that will remain necessary, whether we like it or not, in terms of their impact on the climate. Sorry, Jonathan, you wanted to come in.
Just to bring in one small example of how that carbon shift can actually change people's jobs, but without leading to more unemployment. I know some cities in Europe have taken to having delivery robots, which have essentially replaced Deliveroo and Uber Eats and those other sort of small deliveries. In the cities where they brought in these robots to replace those drivers, the amount of business that has been ordered from these has increased so much that the places that pack the bags that go to delivery shops, those jobs have increased at about the same rate that the delivery drivers have lost. So it's been kind of the same net number of jobs, but shifting from driving and delivering to packing. So it is an example of where you can kind of cut carbon, but the amount of jobs stays the same. And it is those sort of small changes that are going to be happening over the economy over the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Councillor Alderson.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back to the electric vehicle infrastructure issue, it's clearly an issue which needs to be addressed one way or another, particularly for people such as tradesmen or people who operate from home, particularly tradesmen who may rely on transport as a means to do their job, and particularly people that may not have the facilities outside their house. If, for example, if they live in a terrace house where it's not easy to charge their vehicle. By no means am I saying all tradesmen live in terrace houses, but just using it as an example. Has any work been done, or will any work be done to look at other cities who are trialing innovative schemes that may be successful, which we can bring to Leeds, and hopefully bring some of that business with it, because some of these people who want to set up a business may think Leeds is, it's a good opportunity to move my business to Leeds because I can charge my vehicle from my home. We shouldn't, I'm not suggesting we are, because small business has been touched on today, but it is important that we are looking at people that operate from homes and residential, from their residence as opposed to premises, essentially. So just coming back to the question, are we looking at what other cities are doing and seeing if we can bring it to Leeds? Thank you.
That we are constantly looking at other, to be honest, most cities in this country look to Leeds and what we're doing. So, but we do look at Europe, and that's where, as Councillor Pryor mentioned, and that's where the innovations happening. In terms of, if you're ever on YouTube, do go and see a fabulous plumber who trialed one of our electric vehicles, our electric vans, and then he was the best ever. He put a little video of why it was great and how he used it and how he charged it and all the rest of it, and it went a bit viral and thousands of people watched it. We haven't got any data because obviously it was, a really great guy who went on YouTube himself, but we believe that he's done more in terms of kind of encouraging people to get electric vehicles than anyone else. And he's a small business in Leeds who trialled one of our electric vans. So yes, and a part of that innovation is the trial, and it wasn't just businesses, it was charities as well, such as the Baby Bank, and they ended up buying an electric van for their deliveries and things like that. So that's part of the innovation, but we do constantly look around Europe, and we're in partnership with several European and wider internationally countries, and we have forums where we discuss what each other are doing and learn from each other as well. So I took part in one on tree planting with Glenn Corner, our fabulous tree officer, and it was like France, France, Portugal, the Czech Republic, and I'm showing my age there, Czech Republic and China, and a really quite big city I've never heard of in China, and what we're all doing in terms of tree planting and sharing ideas and sharing best practice.
Thank you, Councillor. You did actually answer my what I was going to follow up with, but just to come back to the question, are we in particular looking at electrical vehicle charging schemes that other cities may be trialling?
Yes, we are. But I mean, the government policy is being drawn up at the moment, so we have to wait for that as well. In terms of, so I was at a conference with the civil servant who's drawing up that policy. So yeah, we're constantly looking. But as I said, nowhere's really that far ahead at the moment because we're waiting for government policy to tell us what we should and shouldn't be doing in terms of EV charging.
Thank you. But being ahead of the curve, surely the point of being ahead of the curve is we can look to innovate before government policy.
Want to break the law, though.
But trialling schemes, I wouldn't say trialling schemes is breaking the law.
No, trialing schemes is not breaking the law. We didn't go into the scooter trials, which were government led, because for various reasons. But we are ahead of the curve. But if when you're going to put in a major piece of industry, which we've already mentioned, hydrogen, that may actually be not needed in a few years' time, you have to be quite careful in terms of spending public money and going ahead before government policy is drawn up and fully implemented.
Just a quick follow-up on that then. I think you started the conversation with saying that other cities are actually looking to us for innovation. What are they actually looking at?
Well, they're looking at us in all types of green, our retrofitting, tree planting, in terms of our developing solar farms, our district heating, Leeds pipes is incredibly attractive to other areas. In terms of our electric vehicles and the fact that as a council, we've got the biggest fleet. Dundee might be overtaking us, but I need to check on that. Yeah. But Dundee looked to us and what we were doing in terms of our own fleet. So I can get you a full list, but yeah, I'm often asked to speak at conferences where other cities are very much wanting to hear what Leeds is doing.
It was just an observation, but I think the question was all around electric vehicle charging, not planting trees.
Noted, I think. I'm not going to prolong this any further. Right, this is the point at the end of every item where I try and bring it to a close and someone feels moved to suddenly put their hands up again. So I'm going to say I'm going to move on unless someone else wants to ask a question. No, I'm going to move on. Okay, well, thanks very much for your attendance. Councillor Pryor, I think, will be leaving us. Thank you, Fiona. Councillor Hayden will be remaining for an item later on the agenda. So that brings us to agenda item 8, starting on page 37. I'll just wait a second while Stephen moves into place. I mean, obviously, the two big digital issues of smart cities and digital inclusion have occupied the interest of this board for many years. I think starting in 2015, and at that time they really were quite marginal issues. They weren't at the forefront of the council's thinking or priorities. And I'd like to think that our interest in both of these issues have helped to promote them up the council's priorities. And in fact, I think now it's fair to say Leeds is very much seen as a UK leader. There's still a great deal to do. We did have a report on digital inclusion to a previous board meeting fairly recently, but we were minded to postpone this particular report because IDS was still in the throes of a reorganisation. And so now that reorganisation, I think, is beginning to bed in, and we've got Stephen here to present this report. Stephen assumed that we've read the report, so you only need to introduce it in a fairly brief fashion. But over to you.
Thank you, Councillor, and good morning, everybody. Pleased to meet you in person, which is nice. Yeah, just to follow on from what Councillor Trustwell was opening up with there. So we've been to this board on numerous occasions with a smart cities update, which focused very much on technology and innovation and devices that we were looking to use and that we were trialling. Following the restructure of the integrated digital service and the merger, if you like, of the digital service of the council with that of the CCG, now the ICB, this report has been broadened to include a more broader digital update that includes some of the priorities that IDS will be working on. looking at how IDS will support the organisation to digitise and digitalise and become a more efficient organisation, and how it uses digital technology and how it collects and uses data in a better way to help with decision making. Page 38 covers some of the top 3 city digital priorities. System flow is focusing on how we better use data and technology to help people move from between different care settings, for example, between hospital and social care. At the moment in Leeds, that's very much focused on getting people out of hospital, really, rather than the wider social care setting. So that's something that is being worked on and a key priority. The core business transformation is looking at how we, the solutions that we have in areas for finance, procurement, HR and payroll. But this is not just about changing a system. This is about looking at processes and people and how we really transform the way that we work and how technology and data forms part of that. Security Operations Centre, obviously, cyber security is a key concern for everyone, and some work is underway to look at how we deliver a cyber security operations centre for the city rather than just for the council. Some other key priority areas there, which I won't go into detail on, we can discuss afterwards if you wish, focusing on the shared care record. That's kind of the follow-on, if you like, the next iteration of the Leeds care record. Digitising social care records, and also how we look for funding to support some of this work. The strategy, the report then goes on to outline at a very high level. This is work that is still underway. The Leeds digital strategy that IDS is leading on. Just to know that the digital strategy is being written as a city strategy, so not necessarily a council or a CCG or any other organisational strategy, but one that we hope that other organisations, other people across the city can look at and say, well, I could actually contribute to that in some way, and I can adopt that element of it, and I can do something there to support IDS and the council's approach there. It follows the life stage approach, which has been highlighted in the Best City Ambition document. How can digital support people throughout their lives, from starting well, living well, working well, and aging well? So very much taking that person-centered approach to what we do. Also covers the digital foundations, which I've reported to at this board previously. And of course, getting the foundations right are absolutely fundamental. You know, better use, collection of data, ensuring that we have the right digital skills, digital and data ethics, that we're doing things in the right way. Digital inclusion, of course, which is reported, as you mentioned, ensuring that people can get online, have the digital skills to be able to access services in future. And then finally, the report goes on to our digital innovation programme. Whilst we've done some innovation work in the past, and have reported to this board on, for example, through our innovation labs, we've developed the Leeds Bins app a few years ago. That's still available now, helps people, reminds people when to put their bin out and what to recycle. And we want to do more of that. It's important, however, that innovation programme takes a strategic approach, and that we target our innovation in the right area. And therefore, the innovation programme will work closely with our digital change service, part of IDS, who are currently drawing up some digital roadmaps with specific services to identify what their challenges and their priorities are. And of course, it will be led also by the digital strategy itself as well. And then finally, some examples there of how we will go about that innovation programme in terms of, you know, delivering more innovation labs, supplier days where we learn from other suppliers and other cities that are perhaps doing some of this work already. And also programs such as GovTech Leeds, where we offer grant funding to suppliers and we work with them in more detail and in more depth to really get under the skin of a particular thorny issue, to further understand that challenge and then develop and co-design some solutions with those suppliers. So that's the report in a nutshell, and I welcome any questions from the board.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Again, this is a comprehensive update report, so thank you for that. Just on page 39.15, social care records. Are you on target for the March 23 target?
I will need to get back to you on that. What's happening at the moment with the Leeds Care Record? That's, as you may be familiar with the Leeds Care Record, for those that aren't, this is a way of different clinicians in different settings being able to view healthcare data regardless of where they are, and that's pulling data in from a variety of sources. And the Leeds Care Record has been led and managed by the Leeds Teaching Hospital. There is work also underway on a wider Yorkshire and Humber shared care record, and it's how this work in the future, the work that we've done in the past with the Leeds Care Record, filters in and feeds into the wider Yorkshire and Humber shared care record. So what's been decided is that the Leeds Care Record has been paused and parked for now, and no further development will take place on that, and there is a new board set up to review the future of shared care records across Leeds and integrate with the Yorkshire and Humber work as well. But let me get back to you in terms of timeframes and how that project is going on.
Isaac.
Thanks, Chair. On page 42, 37, you talk about the rollout of broadband infrastructure and getting people super fast internet access. Is there anything more we can do to pressure other infrastructure providers to step up their own rollouts? I've written to City Fibre, I think it is, to encourage them to speed up their rollout in the north of my ward, and I'm sure it's the same in lots of parts of the city where the connectivity is just, the rollout is not going as fast as other areas and isn't as good. Is there anything apart from our own sort of direct procurement, I suppose, is there anything we can do to pressure other providers to speed up their rollout?
I'm not directly involved in that particular project, and I'm not sure what pressure we can apply to those. Obviously, they are commercial companies and have ambitious plans of their own. And in fact, our full fibre rollout in partnership with BT is delivering full fibre connectivity to 1,400 council buildings, schools, and other public sector buildings as well. And that infrastructure then provides the skeleton, if you like, to be able to build out from there. So then BT, of course, will then be able to work with households and businesses in other parts of the city to branch out from the infrastructure that we're supporting. So the work that we're doing in our own right is supporting the speeding up of that rollout. In terms of the pressure that we can put on City Fibre, Virgin Media and others, again, let me get back to you on that. I'm not quite sure what kind of pressure we can apply, but obviously they have ambitious plans of their own to deliver as much as they can right across the city, and see Leeds as one of their priority areas to deliver their own broadband infrastructure.
Do you want to come back, Isaac? Yeah, go on.
Can I just come in on that one, please? I am meeting with the digital providers, the 5G digital providers, and WICA are also looking at a map of where in West Yorkshire is covered, where there are any spots. So that work is ongoing. So I can keep you up to date with that. But I am meeting with the, mainly because we don't have much powers in planning as to where they put their masts, and it can cause a great deal of, Councillor Sharp knows, in our ward, they wanted to put it next to Temple Newsome House practically. So, you know, that's the angle I'm coming at, but I am also very interested in where they are putting the masts, where that connectivity is. Have we got any areas of high deprivation that are not rural areas that are not covered? So yes, I'm that work is ongoing at the moment with but we have some influence that I'm trying to build on, but we have very little statutory powers in terms of the utility providers.
Thanks, that makes a lot of sense. And a different question then from me is around measurement, I suppose, and kind of outcomes we're working towards. So the kind of top 3 priorities under system flow, you talk about we'll need to clearly articulate the business problem it's seeking to address, define it as an outcome, baseline deliverables, and take a people-centered approach. And I think that looks like it's sort of needed for particularly the core business transformation as well, which I'd be really interested to know, I suppose, what we expect to achieve and what the expected value is. So how will we know that the investment in it has been, you know, worthwhile? What kind of metrics you would expect to use to measure progress on that? And I guess as a scrutiny board, it would be useful for us to have, you know, to be able to see those as well and see like what progress we're making. Because it looks like the EY review will be looking at creating a roadmap, but I suppose in a way the more useful bit is a business case, because that roadmaps can change if you realize that what you're doing isn't a success. So I'm more interested in kind of the outcomes and the metrics and expected value over kind of long roadmaps, which might change over time.
Yes, and I will, of course, it's in this report. We report back to this board on an annual and regular basis, and I will, of course, ensure that you're kept up to date with that. This work is ongoing at the moment. So that work with EY, for example, the work with reviewing system flow is ongoing, and I will report back to the board on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shazad.
Thank you, Chair. On page 42, paragraph 39, digital inclusion. Apologies, Councillor Hamilton. Right. What are we doing? I mean, it does say on there that we will ensure that everyone in Leeds has equal opportunity to use digital tools, technology and services. But it doesn't really actually say how we're going to go about doing that. And on top of that, without giving my age away, I think people from the 40 upwards are a section of the community that have been missed. We are doing a lot of digital inclusion for the older people, which happen being a trustee on Maycare between 40 to 55, where technology was slowly coming in, but it wasn't actually in at that time. So people went through college or university or school without actually getting in touch with technology, and then others have had to grasp it, like myself. I'm not very good at it, but I've tried to grasp it. But I think we are missing out a whole population there, because there is nothing, unless you're able to pay for it, there's nothing there for you to go actually say, I want to learn some digital skills. I've not seen anything. I've not seen anything advertised. Then my second question is, what are we going to do? We have got probably some inefficient departments that could do with a technological upgrade in Leeds City Council, and especially vehicle licensing is one of them. They always keep on telling me that the infrastructure is fairly old. Oh yeah, I will. Also, apologies, I will have to, but I won't mention the vehicle licensing department, but a lot of departments, whether it's planning or other departments, the infrastructure is not quite there to actually make them technologically efficient, so they could obviously give savings to the council, as well as make it an easier way to for people to interact with them?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, first of all, on
Before you come in, I think I should, if you could just turn your mic off. I think we need to be clear that Councillor Shazad has hit upon the problems caused by not having smart cities and digital inclusion as the same agenda item, because we have covered digital inclusion in great detail, as you know, as a past member, Mohammed. I mean, I'm not in any way minimising the importance of your questions, but I think in future we will try and ensure that smart cities comes with digital inclusion, because wherever there's an issue relating to digital inclusion contained in a report, members will naturally home in on it, because it's something which for 6 or 7 years we've been very keen on. But we do have comprehensive and regular reports back on digital inclusion. As I say, not to minimise the issue, it's something that we've regarded as a massive priority over the years. So Stephen, just with that comment, I just wanted to explain why you don't in this report explore digital inclusion in much greater detail, because we've actually done it in a much more recent report.
Thank you. Yes, and it's, you know, the report references the digital strategy that we're working on, and that, you know, we're currently working on that, and it is in much more detail. So each of these sections that are highlighted are sort of the highlights, if you like, the headlines, if you like. And obviously, as Councillor Trustwell alludes to there, that digital inclusion is very much a strong part of that digital strategy. As you're perhaps aware, loads of work going on in that space with the 100% digital Leeds team. Still more to do, and that is referenced in the strategy as well, because you're right, there's always pockets and communities who may still be digitally excluded, and it's about identifying those gaps. I think the success of the 100% digital Leeds programme is that this isn't a programme that is simply delivered by Leeds City Council. This is almost a kind of a train-the-trainer approach, if you like, and it's about Leeds working with local community groups and people who are connected to those communities, more so than perhaps we are, and they are delivering that digital inclusion work in their local communities. That's not to say that there perhaps are more communities that we need to connect to and more groups that we need to identify. So that's hopefully that answers that one. But as Councillor Trustwell says, a long report from one of the previous boards will give you much more information on that one. In respect of the department's question that you had, I absolutely, 100% agree, and I don't think anybody else would disagree with that. And that is part of the work that will be that is being done for the service roadmaps. So as I mentioned in my introduction, our digital change team are working closely with services right across the council, but also those covered by the CCG as well, to review what the challenges are, the priorities are in those specific areas, and review the infrastructure. On page 38, that diagram there kind of outlines, where we want to be as an organisation. I would say we're between the emergent and the managed kind of areas at the moment, and looking at application rationalisation. Where have we got applications and solutions that where we've got too many perhaps, and that's difficult for us to manage those because we've just got too many applications as part of the estate. Have we got the right solutions in place to be able to deliver our services efficiently and effectively? So all that work is being done. The roadmaps will be delivered for individual services, and then the digital board will review and prioritise the work that needs to take place, bearing in mind financial pressures, resourcing, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Becky, could you make a note that it would be useful to circulate the most recent report on digital inclusion because obviously we've got a number of new members who would not have been members of the board even a few months ago. And I think it helps to put this in context. So thanks, Councillor McCambridge, for raising that particular point. I've got Councillor Alderson. Oh, sorry, no, I am Councillor Hamilton and then Councillor Alderson.
My question has been asked and answered. It was on the digital inclusion, so I'll pass on.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Councillor Alderson.
Thank you, Chair. Also, my question does touch on digital inclusion. So I will be very brief, as I believe some of it has been answered already. It is about these barriers to ensure that everyone in Leeds has equal opportunities. And that includes our senior citizens, and point 40 does touch on how you will, or how you suggest it will be delivered through a collaboration with partners and networks. I would hope that networks include neighbourhood networks that do an incredible job in my ward in particular, and I'm sure across all of the wards of the members here today. I just want to ask a question, which is essentially to ensure that those neighbourhood networks will be supported throughout rather than expected to just deliver these skills, because I know how hard they are working, and post-COVID, their membership has gone through the roof, and I'm sure that's the same trend across the city. So I would hope that the council would continue to work with them as opposed to expect them to deliver such skills.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Alderson. I think you'll find that the report does focus on the support. In fact, neighbourhood networks have been at the forefront of engaging people who otherwise wouldn't have had the history or the skills. But Stephen, I don't know if you want to just comment on that.
Yeah, I would just second that, you know, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying, yes, neighbourhood networks very much involved in that work, and also will continue to receive the support from the 100% Digital Leeds team, who, you know, support all of the networks and the community groups in any way that they can to deliver digital inclusion across the city. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. I do have a second question, point 44, regarding data collection, essentially. Am I right in thinking that that data will be fed into the Leeds Social Progress Index? Is that linked?
Sorry, which point are we referring to?
Point 44, where you talk about data collection becoming easier to obtain. I assume this data can be fed into the Leeds Social Progress Index.
So the so the IDS are recruiting or have recruited a new chief data officer whose remit will be to oversee all of that. Yes, I would imagine that would be the case. I'm not in a position to be able to answer that completely, I'm afraid, and I can certainly get back to you on that. But certainly, this is about how do we better manage our data? How do we collect the right data? How do we analyse it and interpret that data, and then help us make the right decisions to be able to deliver the right services to the right people and at the right time, and deliver those personalised services. That might be analysis of data, that there might be some automation in there that helps us automate our services and deliver services in a different way. But yeah, absolutely. Any data that we collect will be managed and identified and overseen by the new Office of Data Analytics that is already in place but will expand, and that office will identify and take in data from a variety of different sources to be able to better understand the city as a whole, and how the services that we deliver and where we deliver them.
Neil.
Thank you, Chair. I had two questions if I can, and this is page 39, and we've heard about the sharing of digital information through GPs, hospitals and social care and so on. And over the last year or two in particular, now that there are huge waiting lists with the health service in various ways, the private sector has got bigger And I just wanted to check that there's no sort of distinction between who is providing the care, and that any hospital or doctor, whether he's in the public or the private sector, will still have access to this system.
I'm not sure I'm entirely best placed to answer that question, perhaps. What I can say is that, you know, the idea here, and I believe the idea of the new integrated care system, the ICS, is to provide that, have that regional overview of a much more integrated care system, which includes GPs, it includes primary care, secondary, tertiary care, it includes third sector, it includes the council and the social care provision as well. And I think we've been doing a lot of that good stuff in Leeds already, so I think we're a bit ahead of the curve on that. Some parts of the country are behind us, and therefore the ICS provides that structure. I think we're in a better place, really, because we've already been working very well with other partners across the city. So the idea behind the ICB, the Integrated Care Board for Leeds, and one for each of the other parts of West Yorkshire, and they feed into the ICS, is to provide that much more integrated care approach across the whole healthcare system. And of course, better use of data and technology to ensure that care across, regardless of where you're accessing that care, and regardless of which part of the system that you are accessing, that is seamless, so that you're not going to your GP and telling the story and then having to retell the story when you go to a specialist, and et cetera, that is a seamless healthcare system. That is the approach. I don't know if that directly answers your question, really, but I think that's about as much as I can probably say on that area.
Well, it was just reassurance, really, that, say, for instance, somebody is in a position to pay privately rather than queue, and he goes to a private GP and he's then referred to a private consultant. It could be it will be a GP also working in the health service, of course. I'm just making sure that there's no sudden stoppage of sharing just because it's in a different sector.
No, that is my understanding. That this is about delivering care across the board between organisations, between services that are delivering that care. As far as I'm aware, just because they are in a different sector shouldn't have any detriment to the care that is delivered to that individual.
And the other question, if I can, was I think this also is referred to on page 39. A digital academy will be created. And I just wondered exactly what that was and how much is that going to cost?
So in terms of cost, I don't have those figures, but I don't really envisage that would cost any more than the staff that we have already. This is a Leeds City Council digital academy. Whether that will expand in the future, I guess remains to be seen. But at least the plans at the moment are that this is something for Leeds City Council employees. So this is about ensuring that within the council, our own colleagues, our own staff have the right digital skills to be able to deliver services effectively in the future. So as we transform our organisation, we will be using new technology, we will be collecting data in new ways, and we'll be interpreting data in new ways and analysing that. It's important that we have the right skills. We talk about skilled workforce outside across the broader city. We talk about digital inclusion. We also need to consider our own workforce and ensure that we have the right skills as well. So that digital academy is using our own trainers, our own training people within IDS to ensure that we are delivering a comprehensive training course and skilling people with the right skills to deliver future services.
Well done, Stephen. We're talking through and not being distracted by members of the board playing about with the blinds. Chief Whip, Councillor Hamilton's messing about with the blinds. Okay, if no one else wants to come in, I'll use this opportunity. I'll go on then, Mike, and then I'll ask my questions.
It's a fairly simple one. Page 40, item 26. In that you state that you're going to encourage children to get involved in after-school activities, code clubs, digital innovation. It becomes a little bit cynical after that for me, because it says you're going to promote the breadth of opportunities the sector offers and ensures they acquire the work-ready digital skills. I mean, is this recruitment of children at an early stage into the IT business? It's slightly in jest, but it's a genuine question.
I think, yeah, I get where you're coming from, but I think the point is, you know, this is about encouraging people at a very young age that actually working in the digital sector, there's some great opportunities here. It's not just about coding. It might be about user research. It might be creativity. It might be designing. So there's loads of opportunities here, and let's promote those opportunities from a very early age. And that might be something that sparks their interest, and they decide to then do, you know, a GCSE in computing, and then go on to A levels, and then do whatever at university. So that's the idea there. And of course, and what we're really keen on doing, and this is not just really young people I'm talking about, this is throughout education, so including working with students at the universities as well. You know, how can we engage students in some of our innovation work as well? How can we get them involved in some of the work that we're doing? Because they will bring skills to the table that perhaps we don't have, and they will bring knowledge that perhaps we don't have as well, and bring something, a different perspective, if you like. So it's about engaging, promoting the opportunities, and sparking their imagination and their interest, really.
Right. So a few questions from me, Stephen, from the chair. First of all, page 40, paragraph 21, there's reference, you've referred to it as well in your verbal presentation, the city digital strategy. When will that be finalised, and when will you be in a position to share it with us? My second point relates to paragraphs 24, 25, 26, and the starting well. Some local authorities and their health partners are beginning a scheme whereby they are going to collect information over time from birth through to whenever, which will help to inform health service planning and to chart the challenges and the experience as people as they go through life. Is there anything of that kind intended in Leeds, or is that kind of beyond your pay grade at the moment? My third question relates to the issue of kind of digital by default society, because whatever we do to try and empower and enable people to participate digitally in their relationship with the council, with health bodies or whoever, there will still be those people who will not want to do so. They will want to use the traditional means of access. How are we protecting their rights to enjoy that continued traditional access? And my fourth question relates to cybersecurity. Obviously, we've talked about the council and other agencies collecting increasing amounts of data, sharing that data. What assurance can we give to the public at large who may be listening to this discussion that we have the best system of cybersecurity that's available to us to protect their data?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so let's just go through each of those if I can. In terms of the when, so we're in the final throes actually of the strategy. Just putting some extra content in there, really to highlight the good work that is already taking place in Leeds and how we are building on that. But certainly in terms of the structure and the priorities, most of that is completed now, and also working on the design work. Due to holidays and one thing and another, that is now, we will be taking that to EMT, which is Executive Management Team. That's the CCG equivalent of our CLT. We will also be taking it to the council's corporate leadership team as well. Now, because of holidays, I'm not sure when it's going to EMT, but it's not able to get into CLT until I think it's the 13th of September. Don't quote me exactly on that day, but it's around that date. So I would like, in an ideal world, probably putting myself on the record here, it'd be great if we could launch the digital strategy as part of the Leeds Digital Festival, which is the last 2 weeks of September. But certainly I wouldn't want it to run much further than that. So that's the kind of the broad timeframes that we're looking at. In terms of the starting well bit, yes, I mean, this is about, there's a point, I'm just looking here in the draft strategy about collecting and analysing data about the population of Leeds, their needs, their health, and support the design and commissioning of services. And of course, this means that we're collecting data about population in terms of birth rate and all the rest of it, and the services that we need to deliver. That work, obviously, a lot of that work takes place already, but are there any gaps in the data that we need to collect, and how can we support our young people to ensure that they have the very best start in life, basically? Not if that answers that question for you.
Not quite. It was this idea of following people through life. It's a long-term project, but I know some local authorities, including one in West Yorkshire, are actually pursuing that. But maybe that's a detailed question that would have to be put to colleagues in health and public health rather than expecting you to be able to answer it.
Thank you, and I can speak to colleagues and get back to you on that in any case. Digital by default, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But I think that what we've really made the point and raised it quite early on in the strategy is that this is a digital first, but not digital only approach. And I think that is really important case to make. This isn't just about shifting everything to digital and expecting everybody to get with the programme. This is about digital supporting existing services. Yes, through improving digital skills, working with our 100% digital Leeds team, ensuring that people have the right skills and capabilities to be able to access digital services should they wish to, but that there are also other more traditional means of accessing those services and they won't go away. And then finally, in terms of cyber, absolutely, everybody, we all expect that organisations such as Leeds City Council, the NHS, protects personal data. We have a strong information governance team here who work very effectively. We have a cyber team within the council who are constantly monitoring any potential threats and dealing with those. And in terms of going forward, as I said, work is already ongoing to look at introducing a new, which would be probably a hosted solution, which would be a security operations centre, which would then, offer 24/7, 365 days a year cover. The idea as well is that would be a cyber centre for the city. So one that if other organisations in the city also want to join forces on, that means that we're protected, across the city. Other organisations can tap into that. It brings economies of scale for all of those organisations who are utilising that security operations centre. But yeah, absolutely. One of the, as I put in the report, one of the top priorities to review. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that. Do any board members have any other questions or comments before I thank Stephen and move on? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much.
I think we need Gary now, don't we? We've already got Councillor Hayden. While Gary's making his way to the top table, just to say by way of background that the issue of road safety is one that has occupied this board for many years. Each year, as the report says, we do receive the performance indicators relating to the number of people killed and seriously injured on our roads. 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that was on a downward trajectory, and targets were set to maintain that downward trajectory. Unfortunately, over time, those figures have gone up in a most disturbing fashion, apart from over the last couple of years where COVID led to fewer cars being on the road and a diminution in the figures for people killed and seriously injured. But that's beginning to rise again. So that's something that we're very keen to pursue. And rather than just picking it up annually in respect of the KPIs, we decided that it was time to have a fully fledged inquiry into the whole issue of road safety, which we undertook as a board last year over the course of 3 sessions. And the report before you was the product of our discussions. We not only engage with partners like the police, but we're also very keen to include community road safety campaigners and the families of young road traffic accidents, who I think brought a really, really important dimension to our discussions. So really, this report more or less was agreed by the previous board, and what we're focusing on today is the officer response to the recommendations, which are outlined from pages 51 onwards. And I think the other important point that I would make, and this is reflecting comments that were made by the community campaigners and the parents, is that we should no longer see road safety as an issue to be tackled by highways engineering or traffic calming or enforcement or training of young drivers or older drivers or technological changes, that we should actually view it as a public health challenge. And I think that that was quite an important kind of shift in emphasis which they brought to us and which we endorsed. Obviously, my final sentence is we were delighted as a board that the council had adopted the Vision Zero approach and all that entails in terms of its philosophy. So Gary is now in place. I don't need to fill out any more time. Gary, if you could just introduce yourself, particularly for the benefit of people maybe watching online, and then just briefly take us through the responses to the various recommendations of the board inquiry report, and then I'll open it up to questions from board members. Okay, cheers.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I'm Gary Bartlett. I'm Chief Officer for Highways and Transportation at the Council. As Councillor Trustwell has outlined, significant work has gone into this scrutiny inquiry, and we're very much grateful for the support that's been expressed for the Vision Zero strategy that's come out throughout the meetings that we've been involved in. As has been explained, it is a very ambitious strategy. It's a big move away from the traditional approach, but we collectively believe that it is absolutely the right one and the right way to go, and we should have this ambition. And it's pleasing to note that other highway authorities are considering this. Some have actually already adopted this strategy across the country, and more will follow. And at a more regional, local level, it's being considered by others across West Yorkshire with a view to it being rolled out across West Yorkshire in the near future. Chair, we welcome the wide-ranging recommendations in the report. I wasn't intending to go through each one, but happy to do so if that's helpful. But what was pleased, some of them are for us, but there's quite a few in there that are for a wide range of interested parties, partners, and indeed government agencies as well, which I think is right and proper, because as you say, this isn't about what, if you like, my traffic section can do on road safety. This is about what all partners and parties and individuals, what role they will have to play to help address road safety issues. It is pleasing to note that some of the issues that contained within the recommendations have already moved on a step or two. And I can give an example of that in terms of the speed camera criteria. There have been various meetings at a West Yorkshire level where effectively we want to go in advance of any changes at a national level to the legislation to make certainly average speed cameras, for example, more likely, particularly potentially on our ring road, outer ring road, where we do have concerns. So that is being supported. In fact, I think there's that was agreed or recommended by the Vision Zero board, chaired by Alison Lowe, a few weeks ago, that Councillor Hayden and I attended, and that will go to the relevant meeting for further consideration to explore that. And it has the support of the police. Very importantly, they're very enthusiastic and passionate about that approach as well. So that's just one example, and we have governance frameworks in place now around Vision Zero at that regional level, which is taking shape and starting to progress matters, which is really important. There is a great deal to do here. It's a very significant challenge, and I'm very confident that we'll be sat before you on many occasions between now and 2040 discussing this very issue. My final part of my script was one that I think you said right at the end of your introduction, in terms of just reinforcing this message that this is not just a matter for my traffic section, highways and transportation team to help resolve. Clearly, we will play our part and an important part, but we are not the people who get in a car, who use the public highway, or if they get in a car, that we do not press the right foot on the accelerator. It is those individuals, and it's trying to get everybody to come together in a positive way to change our approach to actually make our communities safer and better places to live. So it's a bit of a daunting challenge, but one that it's right and proper that we take it on. So I could talk for much longer, Chair, about all the recommendations, but maybe it's more appropriate to open it out for individual questions, if that's helpful.
Councillor Hayden.
Thank you. I just want to add that the council on leeds.gov.uk have a draft consultation on vehicular nuisance public spaces protection order. We've been sharing it, and it's to cover Leeds, basically, about that dangerous and nuisance driving that we're all experiencing in our neighbourhoods and wards. So I'd encourage people to take part in that consultation and to share it as much as they can in terms of upping the level of protection across Leeds. Shall I? Yeah, Becky, if I send it to you, yeah.
Thank you, Helen. I think that will be a great interest to a number of us. So do board members have any questions? Councillor Galvani.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on average speed cameras, part of the Connection West Leeds consultation that's out at the moment talks about possibility of average speed cameras along the Dawson's Corner to Horsforth roundabout section. Now, considering you can be held up at Rodley roundabout 2, 3, 4 minutes at the lights there, surely average speed then along that section will automatically be reduced, but spot speeds could still be in excess of the limit. How do you manage both?
I may have to come back to you on that in terms of the technical side of it, and colleagues that are a bit closer to the detail. Clearly, and I'll undertake to do that with Becky, if that's okay, Chair. One of the concerns we have in that part of the world, certainly on the ring road, north and south of Dawson's Corner, are particularly the high speeds that are experienced outside peak hours. And we've had some very nasty fatals on certain sections, as you'll be aware. And it's trying to, again, get into everybody's mental approach that on that section, hopefully, that there will be a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit that along a long section, and that it will be governed by cameras, and that everybody must then move through that system very calmly and safely at those speeds. I have reasons at the moment to go to Newcastle quite a bit, and there are long sections of the A1 that are down to 50 for roadworks, and they are governed by average speed cameras. And everybody, it feels a very calm environment because everybody is sticking to that 50 because they'll know they'll be prosecuted. We haven't got that on certain sections of our ring road, and we want to bring forward this change in criteria to allow us to put them on our ring road at the earliest opportunity. And hopefully, obviously subject to various approval and discussions, we want to extend it across perhaps the whole ring road in due course. By going back to your technical question, I think there will be a scope within those systems to pick up the high speeds, but I'd just like to check rather than give a categoric answer, if that's okay. But I'll feed that back to Becky.
Yeah, presumably the key is the positioning of the cameras, because if traffic's held up in congestion, then that's almost self-policing speeds. But certainly on the bypass, and I mentioned this before, one of my concerns is the kind of camera surfing. A perfect example of that is the sweeping bend on the Stanningley bypass as it comes past Rickettshire Lane, where there are two cameras within a fairly short distance of each other. People slow down for the first one and then put the foot down, and it's really to combat that sort of context. And I think we had an example when roadworks were being undertaken on the M621 a few years ago of the use of average speed cameras, and how for once people were traveling within the speed limit. You didn't go on the M621 at 50 miles an hour and find people flying past you. So again, I think that demonstrated the value, and one of the reasons why the board was very, very keen on average speed cameras, and delighted to hear that movement was taking place in that context. Are there any other questions or comments from board members?
Sorry, Chair. Can I just come in on that final point?
Of course, and then Councillor Kidger.
And that's why, sorry, Councillor Kidger, but that's why the new criteria will look to reducing the space between average speed cameras. I think it's 500 metres at the moment. That's the minimum, to maybe 200 metres, so that on a stretch of road like the Ring Road, we can capture those, and hopefully that will go for approval. So, we can govern between roundabouts, as it were, rather than and between the congestion, and keep, because you're right about the kind of camera surfing, don't you? You know, when even your GPS warns you that there's one coming up, doesn't it? And then you can speed after it. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. If I can just say, our ward is Morley South, and we have the M62, the M1, and quite often the M1 and the M62 is like a parking lot. But then we have problems when traffic is trying to get round onto the 650, the 62, the 653, and they're just absolutely going berserk. You know, we have appealed for cameras again, not maybe speed, but, you know, we do locally, we do the SID things, which, you know, people still don't take any notice of. But I do think that if there's something has to come off the motorways, because that's where the speed goes. I mean, the M62, the big roundabout where, you know, the Tingley roundabout and the Gilson roundabout, it's just unbelievable how people speed through it. You know, and I just do think, you know, as I said, with these, when they'll do anything to get, if they're stuck on the motorway, to go use the other road. So, you know, I would appeal that if we could have some consultation about that area as well.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right, aren't you? People get frustrated at having been caught in congestion, and they quickly try to find alternative routes to the detriment of local communities, and irrespective of those communities, and are speeding through. So what the change in the criteria that we're pushing forward on will open the door slightly on more the ability to have more cameras around the county, not just the city, which I think is a good thing, because I think at the moment very few sites across West Yorkshire are actually meeting the criteria, and so it's a powerful tool that is almost away from us. We can't use that much. So, and we know that when they are deployed, they are effective, although there are disadvantages, as has been explained in the discussion. So take on board the point. Hopefully the criteria will be amended, and we can work with communities about where there are real issues and try to put these physical measures in. And if we can't, then we need to have conversations. And this is part of what we discussed in this scrutiny committee about, well, if we can't do a camera, then what else can we do collectively? Let's just move away from what we can do, but what collectively we can do. It may be something for the national highways, formerly Highways England. It may be something for the local community in some areas, because again, I remember making the comment in scrutiny meetings about when we do speed surveys, people complain to us about all these traffic that is doing a lot of speeding. What we find is that it's the regular users of those routes, locals. So there's something going on there. So how can we educate people as well to just, if you're driving through these routes on a regular basis, just take a bit of extra care. And I think if you, sorry, Chair, hopefully you can sense our enthusiasm for this. I know when I go through my village sometimes, I confess my speed might be a bit higher than it should be, just because I'm very used to that route. I know where the dangers are. So yeah, I have to educate myself, take your foot off it. And we've just got to play that out. So I think it's a whole range. Well, the point I'm trying to get across, it's a whole range of issues and approaches we'll have to take. Some will be sticks, some will be carrots, some will be physical measures, some will be education, training and publicity. It probably just reflects how difficult and challenging it will be over the next few years, but we need to do this because it's important.
Thanks, Gary. It's usually Councillor Buckley who comes along and admits to breaking the law in terms of exceeding the fee. It's obviously become infectious, but I think Councillor Kidger also, although she gave a specific example, actually highlighted one of the points that we returned to as members when we were discussing these issues, about how important it is for the community and maybe members, not just as ward members, but community committee, are engaged proactively in pushing out the Vision Zero agenda. I know that's something that the office and Councillor Hayden were particularly interested in doing. I don't think I've got any more. Okay, Mike, and then Paul.
You mentioned a little earlier about your experience in Newcastle. And I was a bit interested in that myself. I looked at a few numbers. And if you look at those killed or seriously injured in Newcastle, they're kind of averaging around about 105, 110 people per year. Now, my understanding is, I think at the report we had at the last meeting, we'd had 131 in the first 3 months of this year. So we're going on to have over 4 times the level of those killed and seriously injured than Newcastle. Are we using that as an indicator we need to go and speak to the people in Newcastle, or do you already know the answer?
I suspect that part of the explanation is it's a very crude comparison is out. Newcastle has a smaller area, smaller population and fewer road miles than us, but so I'm not sure that that necessarily is always a useful comparison to make, because you need to compare like with like before making sweeping assertions, I think. But Gary, if you'd like to.
Sorry, Gary. Can I also ask when that data was taken? Because if that was lockdown data, the yearly figure for Newcastle, then that would explain it being quite low as well. And yes, we are very concerned about the level. In the first 3 months, continue to be really concerned. Why that is in terms of coming out of lockdown, people getting back in their cars. But I don't think we're going to end up 4 times that of Newcastle by the end of this year. I would be very surprised if we do. I'd just like to know what if that's a yearly data, what year was that taken from? And you're comparing it to the first 3 months of this year. And so you're not comparing like with are you comparing like with like?
I believe I am. I'm using figures from 2016, 17 and 18 for Newcastle.
Gary, before you come in on that, is it possible to get data that relates to the number of KSIs per road mile? Is that the sort of data that's collected nationally? Because I don't want us to get into a discussion about Leeds being 4 times the level of Newcastle when in fact we're not comparing like with like. So I think we need some indication, and it's not just road miles, it's the type of roads as well that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think if I may, I think the broader question here is around, do we benchmark ourselves against other authorities and at a sort of local, regional and national level? And the answer is yes. There are colleagues that do this for us, but also for West Yorkshire authorities as well. And there are comprehensive reports that are done to try to identify where the trends are and what the issues are. Yeah, in terms of just comparing Newcastle at the moment, again, I'd have to go away and just look at the facts and ask colleagues to do that. There are, as Councillor Hayden says, it is a worrying trend at the moment, and particularly in terms of the numbers of fatals on Leeds roads. That is a concern. And we've had some recently, very tragic fatal collisions, but they are largely, generally, beyond engineering influence is a phrase that I often use. And I can't go into particular circumstances or individual cases, but it's usually driver error, extenuating factors such as drink, drugs, stolen vehicles. But we work very closely with the police on every fatal. And if there's something that needs to be done and corrected, then we will do it very, very quickly indeed. But to answer the question, which effectively was about benchmarking, yes, we do. And again, we can provide Becky with some examples of what is done at that sort of level, if that's helpful.
I'll just give you an idea of what's going on, and you weren't far from the answer in my mind when you talk about road mileage. And that's because if you look at Newcastle, they've got a fantastic metro public transport system, less people on the roads. We don't. We have a city that's run by vehicles and motorways. And I think that would be a good place to start looking, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think anyone in this room would would attempt to counter that. It is one of the arguments that we use, that you've got to get cars off the road for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which is road safety, and a mass transit system is one way of doing that. Reliable buses, reliable alternative transport is the main way you get people out of the cars, and until you can provide that, all the exhortations in the world will fall mainly on deaf ears. Councillor Alderson.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't part of this board when these recommendations were discussed, so I do apologise if I'm touching on something that may have been discussed. I just wanted to touch on pedestrian crossing technology. In particular, in my ward, I occasionally get people contacting me regarding the new upgraded Pelican crossings. It seems that there's some confusion sometimes as to, you'll have to forgive my terminology here, but the new style, you press the button, the green man welcomes you to cross, the green man goes off to red, and then the crossing will not go, the traffic will not be welcomed until the sensors sense that someone has crossed. Now, when constituents contact me, that they are worried because they think that this time that they have is to cross, so people are running over the roads, or there's some apprehension there. Now, when I've raised it with officers, they have been fantastic. They've explained how the new system works. I've been able to then update residents, and hopefully they'll be passing that on. Although I must say, I was educated when the officer told me about it. And one point I will raise is a PDF document that he sent me, this particular officer, was actually from another authority with an explanation of the new upgrade, how it works, and it was really helpful. And also he directed me to some YouTube videos, which was from another authority. So I'm just wondering, it may have been done already, but I haven't seen it. So I'm just wondering if there is scope to put some more educational material online, circulate it so we can update people and you know, inform them that these new crossings are not working inaccurately. You know, the red light will remain until you finish crossing, because I don't want people having the apprehension to cross and worry that they've got to run across the road. So yeah, that's just the point I wanted to raise. Thank you.
I think that's really helpful, and I can certainly. I don't think that additional information is being put online yet, but or we've made it a Leeds version of what's being circulated. But I can certainly take that away and make sure that happens. So yeah, we get lots of comments about pedestrian crossings and the new near side arrangements, as opposed to the sort of what I'm used to is the sort of traditional far side green man. And I sometimes, yeah, find myself looking when I know I should be looking here. But it's new technology, and elsewhere it's proven to be useful, and DFT in their way have approved it. So that's why it's being rolled out. So I suppose the general point I'd make here as well is that increasingly, particularly in city centre and in localities, colleagues in the urban traffic management control system, which actually sits in this building now, just on the second floor, which I'm pleased to say, we are increasingly trying to give more priority to pedestrians over vehicles. Now that does bring us into conflict with drivers and people who represent them sometimes, because they want us to give priority to them. But in certain circumstances, more and more often, we're changing that priority towards pedestrians and cyclists, for the reasons I think Councillor Trustwell has alluded to earlier. So I think that's a positive move in these communities. So you'll start to see that that gets rolled out, and hopefully when you press the button, it's a bit quicker and perhaps a little bit longer than it's been in historic times.
No, thank you very much. I'm not disputing the how long the welcome remains, because I understand it's aligned to government policy. It's just more educating people and giving them the tools. I certainly welcome the technology, because in my eyes, it's safer. I just want people to know it's safer, essentially. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think part of the report and the recommendations relates to the importance of disseminating that sort of information. And I think that was a very welcome contribution, because although it was based on a ward initiative, it did have much wider connotation. One of the things about when we start talking about road safety is that everybody comes in with their own particular ward issues, which I hope we can resist. But Sharon, got you down.
Now, mine was just to say, with regard to some of the crossings in my ward, I've had to have 2 of them at the time extended, extra 30 seconds. So maybe they need to look at that, because they start crossing and the light's gone red and people are revving the engine to go. So sometimes it's just that. So, you know, I'm saying maybe it could be new ones that might need to look at it if you can't finish crossing the road, because these 2, one was a school where they're going to school, and even those people that the school bus, the walking bus, they've had to have a key to extend it on a morning and in the afternoon. And then for the elders in another section where I've requested, can they have a look, and this extended them an extra 30 seconds, which make such a difference. However, the cars just have to wait that little bit longer, you know. So sometimes it's that, if we just make sure we look at that, that's what I would complain and check.
Yeah, I mean, again, that was something else that we discussed, and we did get examples where the crossing time allowed, for want of a better expression, had been extended to reflect those concerns. But Gary, I don't know if you want to. Sorry,
yeah,
Helen,
I'll come. If I could just come in there, yeah, and especially in the city centre, because there's lots of people walk. The whole programme is going to and Joel explained it, didn't he? The whole programme of extending the amount of time, that will be extended out to the whole city, because it's all part of nationally the highway code of putting pedestrians first, of pedestrians coming first, and then cyclists next, and then vehicles third, and in that priority order. So yeah, unless you're kind of a bit of a sprinter, but also what drivers have to learn is that it doesn't matter whether it's flashing green, or even if it's gone to green for them and red for the pedestrians. Actually, as soon as somebody steps onto that road, you have to wait until they've crossed. Yeah, and that's law now in the highway code.
I just forgot to say that, once that's rolled out and pedestrians have a bit longer, you have to wait that little bit longer, because I've just said, and I'm thinking nobody's here, and it's good. It's good because sometimes the elders and people in wheelchair, etc. So we need to put pedestrian before cars and cyclists next. Yeah, because my grandson's riding a bike.
Thank you, Sharon. Nicole, I think you indicated you wanted to come in.
I did, Chair, thanks. And Councillor Hayden just picked up on my question. When this Vision Zero came to scrutiny board last time, we touched on the highway code change that gives pedestrians the right of way at junctions. And it's probably too soon to have any data on it, but has there been an increase in injuries in relation to that?
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't, not that's been made known to me. And I think if there'd been certainly a serious incident, it would have found its way to me quite quickly. But certainly as part of our regular monitoring of the performance of our roads, we'll pick that up, and colleagues will start to identify any trends that appear. But as I sit here, no one's made me aware of, thankfully, any incidents with that, because obviously that was a concern, wasn't it? So, and whilst I'm talking, I'm really quite enthused by the conversation and the seemingly the champions that we have for road safety around the table from councillors, which is fantastic. And we'll see if we can build on that through community committees and some reports, because, as I said, we're all in this together.
I could, I think, well, the publicity coming from the DFT has been very, scarce in terms of the rule change. I think for a long time, people will still behave as we've always behaved in terms of when you're a pedestrian, you're very, very careful, aren't you? So there might be some mavericks who say, oh, the law's changed now, I can, I'll just go for it. But I think that behavioural change will take a long time for both drivers and pedestrians. It's like, as Gary mentioned, the lower near side pedestrian, I'm like Gary, I'm still looking up in the air above across the road. That will take it will take kind of time for that behaviour change, but it's a positive thing in the right direction.
Thank you. Helen, did you want to come back at all? So I've not had any other indications. This is the moment again when hands usually just fly up. Right, no, okay. Well, I think we can bring this discussion and this item to a conclusion, and thank Helen and Gary for your contributions. And moving on to agenda item 10, the work schedule. We usually just note this unless anyone's got any issues that they want to raise. If not, thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your normal incisive questioning. I think, again, a very good meeting, and if not before, we will be meeting again, subject to, I think, the online working group that we discussed in respect of affordable housing on the 28th of September.